Retirement. If you could go to only one spot in the entire state of Florida, what would it be? In today's video, I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach, an offense-first argument-style pitch of sorts, to why the following 5 points materially rise Sarasota, Florida to the top of the heap amongst all the other options at your disposal. The importance of the geography, the really unique housing options, the literal shape and infrastructure of the town itself, and much, much more. So I hope you enjoy that. By the way, my name is Adam Hancock. This is the Florida Relocation Guide YouTube channel, your smartest way to buy, sell, and/or invest in the entire state of Florida. Beyond this video here, almost 500 total videos on this YouTube channel alone that cover a range of topics similar to this subject matter. We have free downloads and more in the description box below, and let's get started. Okay, so I feel like I need to kick it off with a quick preface, especially if you don't watch a bunch of my content, before we hop into number one. Because anytime you get into a conversation, me, you, whoever, about picking just one thing, I feel like it's tricky. It's the eye of the beholder situation. Kobe Bryant versus Michael Jordan versus LeBron James. Oftentimes, because of that, it feels like a lose-lose at the end of things. So in those situations, I like to hedge as many bets of value as humanly possible. So even if we're in a devil's advocate healthy discussion, you could see the line of sight to how I could get to my conclusion. And even if you didn't agree, you could maybe say it's fair. And when it comes to the state of Florida, firstly, I think that you choose mostly a coast you want to be on. I prefer the Gulf Coast versus the Atlantic and the East Coast, and I prefer the Southwest Gulf Coast over the Panhandle. Because as lovely as the Panhandle is and as romantic as you can get about it, that's where I went to college and everything, it's a choice. It's in a silo. You know, a lot of those areas are closer to Alabama than they are even to Tallahassee. So central proximity is really, really important, because just because you're retiring and you're choosing a homestead, it doesn't mean you don't want some access to the rest of what Florida has to offer, because no area is perfect necessarily. All the cool stuff that Florida has to offer for the most part is on this side. So that's one. Secondly, if I was at the end of my work career and I wasn't looking for all the things that came with that, I was on the backside of it, I'd want a town that was probably built around play first, work second, a town that was not supported necessarily by everyone, because this is a retirement argument. It's not just moving overall argument. So I wouldn't want to deal with maybe all the baggage that comes with towns that are based on large corporations and downtowns that are built on people hustling in and running out, and all the traffic that comes with that and all the minutia and all the people that are around all the time. I'd probably want something that's based on all the things I want to enjoy, the leisure and the fishing and the beaches. And, I'd want my city centers to be art galleries and restaurants and all social things that support social and hospitality, because I don't need those things anymore. That's kind of the air cover for this argument, because it becomes more minute and more narrow as you start to eliminate things. You don't have to agree with my methodology, but if you understand how I got there, because when I mentioned I want to take a different approach, I've done many, many videos that are a little bit more broad than this, especially like top 10 lists. So you can look on the channel if you just search like the word retirement or, whatever, best places to retire. But in this one, I really want to talk 3-4 levels down of value. If you are like really deep in the search and you're comparing like Sarasota versus Naples versus Boca Raton versus St. Augustine, those kind of arguments, that's where my hedge really lies. So I wanted to have said that. And with that being said, let's hop into number one. Okay, first off, let's talk Tampa Bay, Florida proximity. If I have to pick the best overall spot to retire, I'm most likely going to end up in a mid to smaller city in any state, not the 3, 4, 5 largest hubs. So if all was equal, I'd prefer to be in the best small city with really realistic access to the best large city, if you could choose. And I think the Tampa Bay, Sarasota sister community conversation is an incredible, difficult one to argue against, as far as comparing against similar versions elsewhere. And we've already made the point of maybe you don't want to deal with all the minutia that would come with a large area. However, small city will never get what large cities get. So, all those sporting events, the major sporting events, the concerts, stand-up comedy, the major shopping districts, all that kind of thing, they typically will go to the areas that have the most promise for that future development. So I would want, in 45 to 60 minutes one way, I think Tampa Bay satiates that in an incredibly interesting way. When it comes to sports, you have especially in the recent history, Tampa Bay Rays, the Bucks, the Lightning, tons of spring training baseball, minor league soccer. Both with the large sporting events and the way the city is oriented, you have tons of entertainment options. So Amalie Arena, where the hockey team plays, every artist of every sort probably goes there. It's a very large venue. It's actually really realistically easy to get in and out of. You have the amphitheater, which is a kind of indoor, outdoor, open air kind of concert venue. You have the Straz Theater. So tons of different culture, music, and entertainment of every sort really comes in there. One of the other things I really like about it is the way they separate their districts. So they have, depending on what you're feeling or like what you're into, they have every different version of it. They have, a high end, a 6-block kind of bougie shopping district called Hyde Park in South Tampa. They have the West Shore to the International Plaza area with, not only like a little restaurant district, but a large luxury mall, and then another mall right down the street from it. They have Ybor City, which is, where a lot of the original cigar rolling existed. And some would argue that the very first restaurant where the Cuban sandwich was invented is out of this district as well. So it has all that kind of like style of the brick buildings, and they've, kept a lot of that intact. And so you got a cool eclectic, little railroad trolley runs through there. Tampa Improv Comedy Theater is there. And you go on and on and on. And that doesn't even count Pinellas County, because there's 3 counties in Tampa Bay. Pinellas gives you almost like a more variety of a similar Sarasota Gulf Coast thing. So if you want to hop up there and you want to go to Fort DeSoto and fish or kite surf, you could go to Paso Grill Beach. St. Pete Beach is unanimously popular. Clearwater Beach is right there. You have all that right there in a very accessible way. Major airport, regional airports, everything in between. So you take that, and if you said like, okay, well, Naples, I also really, really love Naples. That would be in this conversation for me because of all the air cover I provided. Naples, for the most part, all of that is on the table for the same argument. However, if you're just choosing between these two, for one, that 45 minutes, like a 50-minute Uber versus 2.5 hours, to me, that's the difference between maybe a night and an overnight. And so that's what I mean about accessibility if it was a perfect world. And that's what Naples is going to do to you. You can't, Naples is so far south, as amazing it is, you can't just jaunt up to Tampa or Orlando or Miami in under 2 hours. None of them. If you go to the other coast, right, and you're in a little bit in Southwest Florida, you get in the Boca Ratons of the world, that kind of thing, Vero Beach, Deerfield Beach, then your major cities that you have access to, one, maybe not as close, but also, Miami might be a little too much for me in this kind of conversation. Same with Jacksonville. So if you're even comparing St. Augustine, I think, your 30-minute city is Jacksonville, which is like the 13th biggest city in the contiguous United States, a massive, massive area. And then you add central proximity of Sarasota versus St. Augustine, and the Atlantic coast water versus the calm Southwest Gulf Coast water. So that's how I get to this argument of what I mean by stepping down. But I do think if you're next to any city in the state of Florida right now in 2024 that's large, I'd choose Tampa over all of the ones I just mentioned. So that's my point number 1. Okay, number 2 on my list is something that I kind of call the magical triangle. And in my mind, any coastal state, when people first got there, they settled like way back in the day. They picked the best place to be. If you get to the venue first, you're going to grab the best seat. And that comes to water, just the best circle on a map of what they knew at the time information-wise, of what would be ideal. And then if you really look hard for it, especially in the state of Florida, a lot of the value, most of the value is an offshoot of that original methodology. So you go east of that main hub, maybe you get a bigger house, maybe you get new construction, that's where the land was at, maybe it's master planned, but your deemed sacrifices, you got further from that stuff. Maybe you're still on the coast, but you couldn't figure out the main plan A, so you went north or south of it, and it's a little cheaper because you get some of the stuff that they're romantic about coastally, but you don't get all of it. So it's that similar idea. It's any major city, the area that you would drive to, where it would have the most of the old school value of why it got popular and the new cool development. Like if you just had to pick one area, what is the one and what does it offer? And when it comes to Sarasota, Florida's metro, unbelievable in this triangle of sorts of what that is. I think even nationally and internationally, I think it's a really, really interesting area if you had to just pick one spot. And that starts with basically, it sits in the northwest corridor of the Sarasota city limits below Bradenton, above Venice. And in this area, if you go west parallel to it, you get, it's kind of, you go west, you get everything. And that starts on the mainland with downtown Sarasota. That's point 1 in the triangle. So it goes like this. Like I had mentioned, all the things that I'm interested in as far as play first, work second, or whatever, this is right up the alley. It's super walkable one. You can walk the whole thing. It's got rated restaurants and boutiques, art galleries, old school bookstores, all that kind of thing. It's not an area that people are rushing into to work and then leaving, going and living in the suburbs and not enjoying it. It's based on the median type of person that lives there. And then because we're also have the benefit of barrier islands here, it goes mainland to bay to island to Gulf. So the in between the island and the mainland creates an interesting dynamic because it's its own little paradise of sorts. Downtown Sarasota basically runs into the bay in essence. And you have like a marina, and some condominium districts. But you go from downtown Sarasota to triangle number 2, or point number 2 on the triangle, which is less than 3.5 miles. You cross over a bridge and you get to Lido Beach, which is lovely on its own outright. And the benefit of Lido Beach is you also have a 100+ shop, restaurant, boutique, cosmopolitan beach district called St. Armand Circle. And we have a really interesting history with John Ringling and all this kind of stuff in this, which I'll get into a little bit later in this video. But a lot of it was on the back of his original settlement and what he was interested in. But now you have 2 major shopping districts that are completely different from each other, 3.5 miles apart, 2 beach accesses to Lido, and then right above Lido, Lower Longboat Key, which is about a 7 to 8 mile end-to-end barrier island. The bottom half of it offers a lot of the value of it, including like the Longboat Key Club and the golf and all that kind of thing, without having to necessarily go to the parts where it gets a little bit more desolate and loses the central proximity argument. So I would say that little border, which I'll show here while we're doing the video, would be in the conversation for me as far as triangle point number 2. And then lastly, as I digress, you go the other direction. So one was here, the other one's still here, goes to here. You have Siesta Key. Siesta Key is like in the top 5 list of like every beach list that's ever been made. Quartz white sand, doesn't literally on 105-degree days, the sand does not get hot to the touch. It's only 7 miles long, 3 beaches on it, but the north part of the island is where all the action is. So the island's called Siesta Key, but Siesta Key Beach is what everybody thinks of. A lot of people, if you're not familiar, aren't even aware really the value of the rest of the key. But it's on the north side. It's not just randomly on the island. So it offers that close access to the rest. And so it's in the triangle. And it also has the main shopping district on the key, which is Siesta Key Village. St. Armand Circle is a lot higher end feeling. Siesta Key and Longboat Key and all of that is like a little bit more in that vibe. Siesta Key is a lot more laid back. It's kind of tourist centric. It looks like it does online. And that's a real approachable, kind of cool, real vacation paradise island feeling island that you could walk to the beach as well. And then, you got west of the trail, single family neighborhoods in between that. And if you're in the right part, like if you were in a neighborhood called Cherokee Park, my favorite, you're in a neighborhood, you have large single family houses, no HOA on the bay, downtown Sarasota, less than a mile behind you to the east. And then you got Siesta Key and Lido, 5 miles south Siesta Key, Lido 3 miles, but you're not on an island having to drive off of it. You're on the mainland. Unbelievable value. I think a lot of areas offer maybe 1 or 2 of those points, but not all 3. So that's my point number 2. Okay, the third major point I'd like to think through is related to new construction homes and master plan developments. And this is where Sarasota, in my opinion, becomes especially dangerous in a no-holds-bar argument against any place that you would consider remotely apples to apples. Because most towns that offer the value of what I've been beating down your throat this entire video so far usually come synonymous with overpaying maybe for bungalow housing or high-fee condominiums or resale homes in general, because the reason that you may be attracted to it is the same reason that people have been attracted to it for a long period of time. So it simply is mature. There's no room to build individual homes a lot of times unless you knock down something current, let alone full-scale neighborhoods. And in my experience, especially when it comes to relocation, the idea of the new construction 3-bedroom, 2.5 with a den, screened-in patio in a neighborhood that is kind of close to all the stuff you want typically wins out. And this is where like a St. Pete or some of these areas like St. Petersburg, Florida, you could pay $1 million for a 1,400 square foot bungalow with a crawl space and a termite history just as easy as you could do the house I just explained in a master plan development in Sarasota. So what I'm going to attempt to articulate in this, if I'll do my best in the rest of this section, Sarasota, Florida should not have half of the depth of what I'm about to explain. Nowhere else really does. It's incredibly unusual. So I just want to kind of get that across. So first, let's talk abundance before we go anywhere else. So right now, roughly, there's 1,244 active new home communities being built across the entire state of Florida. Sarasota Bradenton is responsible for 148 of them. Now, it doesn't sound like a ton, but listen to the other cities. Tampa, St. Pete, much larger, 174 versus 148. 203 in Orlando, which is much larger. I told you how big Jacksonville, St. Augustine was, 169. Miami-Dade, it's massive. Mini Manhattan, only 30. You have 11 total in Broward County. A handful in Fort Lauderdale, which is a large area. Gainesville, big area. You have 6. Lakeland, you have 95. You get the point here. a place like Sarasota that's so condensed that you can get to basically everything in 45 minutes or less, any direction you go, has 12% of the total new construction housing in the entire Sunshine State, is unique to say the least. Okay, on the back of that, it corresponds to it, but potentially even bigger value, which I'll talk about in brevity here. Gone are the days, really, especially in the last 5 years, where you going to even with a new home in a new neighborhood, back in the day, the amenities in that neighborhood, a lot of times differentiated, not even the geography, a ton of times it was what did that neighborhood have with the pool, or did it have tennis? And now does it have pickleball versus that? And that really differentiated communities from each other. But it's so commonplace these days that people are finding themselves valuing communal amenities. What do I get when I go outside the neighborhood? So how does this one neighborhood correspond to the overall area? And Sarasota, Florida probably has one of the best mousetraps, not just in the state of Florida itself, but the United States as a whole, because those 148 communities that are built in here aren't just in silos. So Sarasota possesses Lakewood Ranch, which is the #1 multi-generational master plan community in the United States. So 40 plus communities, every type of orientation you could ever want, every type of home. They found out that the sacrifice of what I got at the beginning was you had to go to town for everything. They found that out early, and they've been trying to satiate those needs. But in the last couple of years, especially, they've gone a long way. So they're building full, not just little rinky-dink shopping centers, full downtowns within the districts. So Lakewood Ranch has Waterside Place, which is unbelievable, 25-foot sidewalks. It's on water. It's got breweries and distilleries and restaurants and shops and everything in between. Downtown Lakewood Ranch, there is communal libraries and every school you could want, all that kind of thing. They also just built Welland Park. So Welland Park, the newest district, is 9 to 11 neighborhoods called Playmore, has downtown Welland, which is another downtown. So now you really got everything but the beach, which they're also trying to satiate with even crystal water lagoons. So what they're trying to make the argument for is you don't necessarily have to go to the coast other than the beaches, because a lot of those, the reason you went was restaurants, nights out, stuff like that. So they've satiated that. Welland Park is in Venice, so it gives you a different option. And it is 18 minutes or less from 4 beaches. And those aren't any of the beaches I mentioned at the beginning of the video. And that's still in Sarasota County. So you have Venice Beach, you have Casperton, the shark tooth capital of the world. You have Brohard, the only dog beach in the county. And then Manasota Key and Englewood, which is a unique bird on its own outright. And then they're building a new area called 3H Ranch, which I mentioned in a video a week ago, which is the middle. So Lakewood Ranch is here, Welland Park's here, in the middle of Sarasota. So the parallel area to the Magical Triangle, that has been an area that was mature. So they'd spotty new construction neighborhoods in between. Well, now they have a 2040 plan, 6,500 homes, 14 neighborhoods. It has STEM schools built into it. It's going to have 250,000 square feet of commercial, 120,000 square feet of office space, 500 acres set aside for conservation. All of that is in an area where it is incredibly hard to get more than 20 miles one way from the greatest value the town has ever offered. And that is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest factors next to geography that I would say Sarasota has going for it. Okay, my point number 4 is culture. And I'm not gonna get too crazy in this particular section because I did in one part hit this earlier in the video, but I've also discussed this a lot on the channel, really in depth, that were videos that were really about this subject matter. So check those out. But I do wanna share a couple quick thoughts on in context here. One is that, Sarasota is known as the cultural coast. A lot of towns that are on paper very, very similar to our area here. They are small coastal beach towns in great spots that have been popular for a long time, that have a lot of people competing to be in them. Those same elements that make it lovely create a pretentious air. And it's very, very hard to navigate that and then not go that direction just because money flows in. There's only a certain amount of homes. That creates exclusivity overall in any market. It's supply and demand. And a lot of times that creates, we're inside our gates, you can't come in. It's a 1% versus a not. And somehow it's very hard to do the alternative, right? Because it's hard to prevent that and maintain integrity, but still offer those cool things. Sarasota, I don't know how, and maybe it's just the company I keep. I grew up here. I've done a lot of business with people here. It's a melting pot. So there's relocating too. So you have more people probably in Sarasota, Manatee that aren't from here than are. And then you have all of these really unique parts of town that I mentioned. Somehow it has maintained a humble tone in my experience through and through. You have anomalies anywhere, right? But I think a lot in part to the history and the intentionality of why people want to be here. The artistic element of type of money here isn't pretentious. And I don't know, I'm not even describing it well, but I want to relay the sentiment. It's like that is the feeling. I feel like the people that move here are excited they're here and they're excited you're here. And it's just that everyone chose to be in the same place and it created a good environment, not a bad one. And the history of it was art first. So people had money, but they wanted to develop a cultural, diverse area. And so, anyway, that ramble I wanted to throw in here. And then on top of that, so technically that cultural coast tag, what that is for is because the amount of both arts and artists that reside here, the density of that for a relatively small locational radius is really, really unusual. So that, I mean, that includes 13 stages, performing stages within a 1 mile radius of the downtown. And I kind of explain where that downtown was too. The nation's second largest community theater. You have the John Ringley Museum. You have the Katazan and much, much more. Again, just like the new construction homes, you're seeking to not, I don't want to live in a big city but I love, I mean, we have people on our organization that relocated with me that now work as agents on our team here. People that like go out constantly every single weekend, empty nester type of ages that were able to live in Sarasota and not have to do a Miami or a Tampa or Jacksonville because they didn't want the big city. They wanted the size of our town, but they still needed more entertainment to satiate it than just putting on a golf cart back and forth to the beach every day. And we are able to satiate a lot of those entertainment needs as well and those lifestyle needs. So there's that. Okay, my fifth and final point for today's video is a sneaky one. It's something I call fringe cities. So I've been just spent the last 25 minutes or so making as many points as I can about you go to one part of the state, you go to one part of the city and you get everything, central proximity, stack value on top of each other, blah, 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 blah. Well, a big problem with that concept as a whole, depending on where you're at, is that it doesn't work for everybody. Typically, if you had all that value I just explained, it doesn't come at a discount. Maybe it doesn't have the type of housing you necessarily need. Maybe it doesn't work for you, but your dream is this one particular city. Everything hospitality-wise, leisure-wise, is your jam. But that idea just doesn't work. Like it just doesn't, it's a square peg in a round hole. Well, there are many parts of the state of Florida where if plan A, your primary goal, plan A didn't work for housing criteria, timing, some other related reason, then the plan B potentially could make you not even want the metro at all anymore. The plan B is such a big drop off from plan A that you don't know what to do. Well, one of the big benefits of Sarasota Manatee, the general Sarasota, Florida metro, is there's a lot of plan Bs and there's a lot of plan Cs that are really similar, that are mirrors, and that you can really use what already happened to predict the future. So a couple examples for you. Say if we stuck on that kind of coastal theme, we have, that magical triangle. That's a hard area to live around. If you got to live in downtown in a historic district, you got to be in a luxury condominium, or you have to be physically on a barrier island, right? That's always going to be unanimously hard. And then, or you just got to go straight east. Well, what if you still want the coastal vibe? You can do it in two ways, pretty meaningfully, and maybe three. One is the Venice conversation. If you love Siesta Key or Anna Maria Island or something like that, if you go down to Venice, because it's like a mini Sarasota, but because historically everyone valued that triangle, it's a junior, so it's unanimously more affordable. It's actually one of the most affordable beach towns in the entire Gulf Coast of Florida, believe it or not. And Sarasota is not. So they're 40 minutes apart. So Venice would be a great way to satiate. It's got all those beaches I mentioned. It's not a barrier island, so it's a lot more coastal feeling. It's easier to live on. It's cheaper to live on. There's master plan new construction down there, and there's not next to Sarasota's beaches. Englewood is south of Venice, which is also south of Sarasota. So Englewood would be junior Venice. If you go east of Venice, that's Northport. So Northport is cheaper than both Sarasota and Venice, but puts you in that similar kind of go south, get more conversation. If you go up to Lakewood Ranch, I mentioned the #1 master plan community in the United States. Well, Parrish is right on the back of Lakewood Ranch. It's almost a junior version of Lakewood Ranch. It has sister new construction communities. You can name 5 to 10 new construction communities in Lakewood Ranch, and I could tell you the Parrish version name. And that area is just ripe for development. Palmetto's on the back of that. Coastal Bradenton going north of Sarasota is another way to do a different version of going south to Venice. So you kind of get the point here, but a lot of cities don't offer that. If you love the best part of downtown Naples and the Aqualane shores and Port Royal and that area, there's not a one that it slightly resembles it. If you go south, you're in Marco Island. If you go north, you're in North Naples, Bonita Springs. It's a different world, right? Tampa just an anomaly, right? No part of Pinellas County is like the other parts of Pinellas County. The best parts of South Tampa and all that area, there, it's either that or complete suburbs. You just go on and on and on. So I thought that was unique. I think that's not super commonplace. So if the best area, you need $200,000 cheaper, you can solve it in a way that you could completely get your head around and even win on house equity, because you want 10 minutes further than what the minds of the people deemed important. So I think variety is always good for a buyer, always good for a renter. And that's how I'll end that. All right, that is a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to the channel. Ton planned for the rest of 2024. It's a lot of value we're gonna try to pack in there. This is just the best way to see what's coming next. My name is Adam Hancock, if we have not met once again, and this is an information source that I call the Florida Relocation Guide, but I also own on the back of it a full-scale residential real estate brokerage called the Sunshine State Company. It truly covers the entire state, but we heavily focus in the Southwest Gulf Coast. So Sarasota, Manatee Metro, all of Tampa Bay, all of Naples, Fort Myers, Lee, Collier County conversation. So if you are seeking relocation, you are looking at new construction homes, you're trying to figure all that out, or have any real estate need, listings, investment, any of that kind of thing, please consider reaching out if you resonated with this kind of content. Really unique team. It's not in a silo. It does echo the sentiments that we're gleaning here, and it all is pushed down from the top. And finally, the sunshinestateco.com is kind of my home-based foundational website. This is where, if you haven't caught the random links all over the channel, this is where it's consolidated. So you can not only read many valuable blog versions of all the videos if you're into more of a summarized version or a different version, all of the downloadable guides. So I build like analytical spreadsheets that basically give a buyer like all the sales that ever happened in a way that you can actually look at it to see kind of like what neighborhood might be best for you. I've updated a Venice one. I have all of Sarasota, Manatee County. So like all 20,000 something lines. I just did a parish one. Tampa's coming soon. St. Pete's coming soon. We have Spanish versions of our relocation guides, and we have a Sarasota, a Naples, and a Tampa Bay relocation guides updated. So we pack it all in there. So there's a free guides resources tab. It's called something like that. We have a monthly newsletter. One of the newest things we released is a school community group. It's SKOOL. It's like a community group platform. It's like Facebook groups kind of. But this is somewhere you could go in and ask me direct DM questions, and I usually answer them via voice memo. And typically within 24 to 48 hours, sometime a little longer, but I try to get back to you as soon as I can. So if you have something niche, or you want to speak to me directly or something like that, then check that out. That is also in the description of this video. And most importantly, thank you guys so much for taking a little bit of your day to watch my content, and we'll see you on the next one.